She photographed the W27,001 bills each evening, arranging them precisely on her modest Itaewon apartment table before capturing the date stamp her Mafia boss husband had pressed into each one, not because she needed the money for survival, but because she was building an evidence file of how catastrophically her Korean husband had miscalculated the woman he was discarding. He thought he was teaching her gratitude when he handed her daily cash with a lecture about humility before driving back to his mistress's luxury apartment, completely oblivious that the pregnant black wife he'd exiled had secretly acquired 68% of his crumbling family empire, while he was too consumed with forbidden passion and his mother's approval to notice the shell corporations systematically purchasing Kim Industries stock at distress prices. The irony was almost mathematical in its precision. Wait, if you want to see a mafia boss realize he just handed his entire empire to the woman he thought was powerless, smash that subscribe button right now. Drop a like if you believe revenge tastes better when it's served in a boardroom, and comment where you're watching from, because this story goes global and I want to know which country is about to witness the most satisfying takedown in corporate history. Trust me. What happens in the next 60 seconds will make you believe in karma. Now let's dive in. While he was selecting wedding venues with Min Seo, she was finalizing the hostile takeover of Kim Industries, the very corporation his mother, Kim Sha-roo, had weaponized at every company gala, transforming those glittering Seoul events into public executions where she could mock the foreign woman her son had married before finding someone acceptably Korean. Sha-roo's cruelty had become legendary in Seoul's corporate circles. Her xenophobic remarks delivered in flawless Korean that Amanda was expected to absorb without flinching, her cultural gatekeeping reducing other executives to uncomfortable silence. But her most vicious performances were always reserved for her own daughter-in-law, the pregnant American woman she assumed was culturally isolated, financially dependent, and irreversibly trapped. When the Cherry Blossom Gala arrived at the Shilla Hotel, Jae-hoon brought Min Seo as his official date, presenting her with the ancestral jade necklace that had been Amanda's wedding gift. Sha-roo prepared her most devastating speech about preserving bloodline purity and removing foreign contamination, and the entire Kim Industries board of directors had absolutely no idea they were now employed by the woman seated at table 42 in the back corner, 6 months pregnant in an elegant black hanbok, her phone quietly tracking Phoenix Capital's confirmation that the takeover was legally irreversible. The phone camera steadied in Amanda's hand as she framed the stack of bills on the small kitchen table. 147 days. She counted without counting anymore, her eye trained to notice gaps, edges, serial numbers catching light. The click of the shutter felt louder than it was. Proof of life, proof of compliance, proof that she was still inside the agreement, even if she was no longer inside the family. She slid the money back into the envelope, sealed it, and tucked it into the drawer beneath the sink where cleaning rags were folded with military care. The apartment in Itaewon smelled faintly of detergent and old wood, the kind of place you rented because it asked no questions and offered no opinions. She leaned against the counter and let the memory come, uninvited but familiar. Jae-hoon's pause had been brief, polite even. A man trained to make choices quickly had still taken a moment that day, eyes moving between two futures like he was scanning numbers on a screen. Then he chose Min Seo, not with cruelty, with efficiency. Amanda had recognized it for what it was. The same instinct she had praised in boardrooms, now turned against her. Her phone buzzed before she could spiral too far. New York, incoming. She answered on the second ring, face composed, voice steady. "Tell me we're green," she said. Her lawyer's face filled the screen, sharp suit, sharper eyes. Midnight for her, late afternoon for him. Time zones had become a game Amanda played well. "We're ready," he said. Phoenix Capital cleared the last internal review. Funds are staged. Once we move, there's no pulling back. Amanda nodded, eyes flicking to the window where neon signs bled into the dusk. Itaewon never fully slept. It shifted, adapted, survived. She felt an odd kinship with the streets below. "And regulatory noise?" she asked. "Managed, quietly," he replied. "Your structure held. They underestimated you." She almost smiled. Almost. When the call ended, the room felt smaller. She crossed to the narrow desk by the window and sat, fingers resting on the scarred wood. There had been a time when her days began with black cars and ended with champagne flutes clinking against skyline views. She'd built her name early, faster than anyone expected. Venture capital had suited her. It rewarded pattern recognition, nerve, and the ability to walk away without flinching. She'd walked away from founders she believed in and deals she loved, all in service of the long view. Success had come not as luck, but as confirmation. Then came Soul. The invitation had been wrapped in family language, presented as belonging rather than business. The Kim family liked to collect people the way others collected art. Amanda had known the risk. She'd accepted it anyway. The scale of their reach was irresistible. Power always is. At first, she'd been an asset. Her models were clean, her instincts sharp. She translated Western caution into Eastern patience and back again, smoothing edges, closing gaps. Jae-hoon had watched her the way men like him watched everything, without obvious hunger, but with intent. She had mistaken that for partnership, a shared center of gravity. The shift came quietly. Fewer calls, meetings she was no longer invited to, decisions made without numbers. Then Min-seo arrived, polished in a way Amanda never tried to be. She spoke less, listened more. Where Amanda pushed, Min-seo waited. Where Amanda demanded clarity, Min-seo offered calm. The family responded the way families always do. They chose comfort over challenge. Exile did not arrive as a confrontation. It arrived as silence. The apartment had been part of the settlement. Temporary, they said. Transitional. A word that assumed an ending. The daily cash payments were meant to keep her compliant, to remind her that survival came from their goodwill. They underestimated her relationship with patience. She had built companies in longer shadows than this. Amanda rose and paced the room, bare feet silent on the floor. She replayed moments not with regret, but with study. Every dismissal, every half-smile, every time Jae-hoon had chosen ease over friction. She had once admired that about him. Now she catalogued it. Outside, laughter floated up from the street, tangled with music and traffic. Life moved forward without asking her permission. She picked up her phone again and scrolled through old photos she never deleted. Not because she missed the life, but because she respected the woman who had lived it. The woman who had walked into rooms knowing she belonged there. That woman had not vanished. She had adapted. Phoenix Capital was more than a transaction. It was leverage wrapped in legitimacy. The final acquisition would shift balances quietly, the way real power always did. No headlines, no scenes, just consequences unfolding over time. Amanda returned to the kitchen drawer and pressed it shut with care. Tomorrow she would photograph another envelope, another piece of evidence that she was still playing along. They believed she was contained, waiting, learning to accept less. She turned off the lights and let the city glow through the window. In the reflection, her eyes looked calm, focused, not broken. Exile, she had learned, was not the same as defeat. It was space, and in space, plans could breathe. Kim Sha-roo never raised her voice when she planned a war. She preferred silk gloves and smiling photographs, the kind that ended up framed in business magazines with captions about legacy and grace. The Cherry Blossom Gala was announced the same way, softly, beautifully. as if it were a gift to the city rather than a knife slid carefully between ribs. Invitations went out on thick cream paper, the ink a muted rose. No mention of purpose, no hint of correction, yet everyone who mattered understood. This night was meant to clean the house. Amanda's name had already begun to fade from the corridors of the Kim estate. Staff spoke it less. Executives avoided it altogether. Kim Sharu intended the gala to finish what silence had started. Public memory was fragile. It only needed the right image to replace the old one. Min Seo was that image. Sharu watched her in the mirror during the final fitting, adjusting the fall of fabric at her shoulder with a mother's touch that carried no warmth. Min Seo stood still, trained well enough to understand that stillness itself could be obedience. The dress was pale pink, chosen to echo the blossoms that would flood the ballroom. Soft, respectful, unthreatening. Sharu knew exactly what she was doing. A woman dressed like this looked like continuity, not conquest. "You must not speak much tonight," Sharu said, her voice gentle. "People listen more when they think you are shy." Min Seo nodded, eyes lowered. She had learned early that approval came in fragments, and only when she made herself small enough to receive it. Across the estate, preparations moved with practiced precision. Crystal chandeliers were cleaned twice. Security was doubled without announcement. Journalists were placed exactly where Sharu wanted them, not close enough to intrude, not far enough to miss the moment that mattered. She had rehearsed that moment in her mind again and again. The necklace lay in its velvet-lined case on her dressing table. Ancestral jade, deep green, cool even through glass. It had been given to Amanda on her wedding day, presented with bows and applause, photographed from every angle. At the time, Sharu had smiled and clapped with the others. A good matriarch never shows her teeth too early. Now the necklace waited to be reassigned. She lifted it carefully, letting it rest against her palm. Jade was not flashy. It did not beg for attention. It endured. That was why the family had cherished it. That was why giving it to Min Seo mattered more than any speech. Objects could rewrite history if placed in the right hands. Her assistant hovered near the door, tablet pressed to his chest. He had been efficient all day, too eager, nerves showing in small ways. Sharu noticed everything. She always did. "Madam," he said, stepping forward. "The guest confirmations are complete. Attendance exceeds expectation." "Of course it does," she replied, fastening her earrings. "People love funerals when they are disguised as celebrations." He hesitated. A mistake. Hesitation was how truth slipped out. "There is something else," he added quickly, then too quickly tried to soften it. "Nothing urgent, just internal matters." Sharu turned to face him fully. One eyebrow lifted. That was all it took. He swallowed. "The Seoul accounts are tighter than projected. The Hong Kong transfer has been delayed again. If the merger announcement does not calm the markets, we may face difficulty maintaining appearances through the next quarter." Appearances. The word hung there, heavy. Sharu did not react at once. She picked up the jade necklace and placed it back into its case with care, as if the world were not quietly threatening to tilt beneath her feet. When she finally spoke, her tone was calm enough to be kind. "You worry too loudly," she said. "Markets respond to confidence. Tonight provides that." "Yes, madam," he said, relief rushing in too fast. He bowed and retreated, unaware of the damage already done. Sharu stood alone again, her reflection steady, lips composed. Desperation was a luxury she did not allow herself. Still, the truth settled into her bones. The company was bleeding. Deals were fraying. The old alliances no longer held like they used to. That made tonight essential. The ballroom filled as the sun dipped low, cherry blossom branches arching overhead, their petals pale and deliberate. Music drifted through the space, slow and controlled. Guests moved in clusters, glasses in hand, eyes alert. They were there to see who stood where, who belonged, who had been removed. Amanda was not there. Her absence was discussed in murmurs that died as soon as Sharu entered the room. She glided forward, a figure shaped by years of command, and the room adjusted around her without protest. Minseo followed half a step behind, exactly as planned. When the time came, Sharu took the stage with ease. She spoke of heritage, of family duty, of honoring tradition during times of renewal. She spoke as blossoms fell gently from above. A visual too perfect to resist. Cameras flashed, heads nodded. Then she opened the case. The jade caught the light, green and unyielding. A quiet intake of breath rippled through the crowd. Some recognized it immediately. Others sensed its weight without knowing why. "This necklace," Sharu said, "has always belonged to the woman who safeguards this family's future." She turned to Minseo and lifted the jade, fastening it around her neck with hands that did not tremble. The message landed exactly where it was meant to. Amanda was erased without a word spoken against her. Minseo was crowned without being asked if she wanted the weight. Applause filled the room, polite at first, then eager. Investors smiled, rivals recalculated. Sharu watched it all with satisfaction sharpened by urgency. The board would settle, the markets would breathe. For now. As petals continued to fall, she allowed herself one private thought. Designs only worked if no one saw the cracks forming beneath them. The city learned Amanda again in silence. Not through headlines or ringing phones, or the crude spectacle of money changing hands, but through balance sheets that settled like dust and never rose. Park Jin-woo moved through those numbers the way surgeons move through skin, calm, exact, unseen. He worked nights when markets in one hemisphere slept, and mornings when another woke, stitching transactions together across time zones that never spoke to each other. Shell companies blinked into existence and vanished. Funds crossed oceans without leaving a wake. By the time anyone could sense a shift, the ground beneath Industries had already changed shape. Amanda watched it unfold from the quiet of her apartment, barefoot on cold tile, hair loose, a glass of untouched tea sweating onto the marble counter. She didn't ask Jin-woo how he did it. She had hired him years ago for the simple reason that he never explained himself unless asked, and even then, only once. Trust between them was not built on comfort, but on results, and results were piling up neatly in encrypted folders that lived nowhere and everywhere at the same time. By dawn, the last shares were in place. Control did not arrive with fireworks. It arrived with a document packet slid across a table, thick, unremarkable, heavy in the way only paper backed by power can be. Jin-woo laid it out with care, smoothing the edges as if the pages might bruise. "Kim Industries," he said, voice low. "Controlling stake. Clean chain. No fingerprints." Amanda picked up the first page. Her name did not appear. Not directly. It didn't need to. 17 countries, a lattice of holding entities, investment arms, and quiet trusts folded into one another until ownership became a riddle no court would untangle without tearing itself apart. $4 trillion, spread so wide it stopped looking like wealth and started looking like weather. She felt it then. Not triumph, not relief, but a steady heat under her ribs. The same feeling she used to get as a child standing too close to a bonfire, knowing that fire could warm or destroy depending on how close you leaned. "Good," she said, and meant more than the word could carry. Jin-woo nodded once. He had seen this look before, not excitement, readiness. While the city woke and men in glass towers drank their first coffee believing the day belonged to them, Jae-hoon signed another rent check. He did it without thinking, pen gliding over paper with the bored grace of someone used to owning outcomes. The amount was generous, deliberately so, a kindness in his mind, a reminder too. He imagined the check arriving, imagined Amanda noticing the number, imagined gratitude blooming quietly in her chest like it always had. He never wondered why she no longer thanked him the way she used to. The envelope arrived in the early afternoon, slipped under her door by a courier who didn't meet her eyes. Amanda picked it up, turned it over once, then set it on the counter beside the documents Jin-woo had delivered hours earlier. 2 stacks of paper, one offering shelter, the other ownership. She laughed then, softly, the sound surprised out of her. The apartment had never felt like home. It was too clean, too borrowed, too dependent on someone else's signature. For years, she had played the role expected of her. Quiet, careful, contained. She had learned when to lower her gaze, when to accept help, when to let men believe they were holding her up rather than standing in her way. That version of Amanda had been necessary once. Survival has its own manners. She tore open the envelope and pulled out the check, looked at the number, folded it once, then again, smaller and smaller until it was nothing more than a thin strip of paper she dropped into the trash without ceremony. Jin-woo watched her do it, expression unchanged. "It won't be missed," he said, "but it will be noticed." "Good," she replied. "Let him notice." She walked to the window and looked down at the city, the traffic threading itself through streets like veins. Somewhere in that movement, Kim Industries executives were still convincing themselves they were in control. Somewhere else, Jae-hoon was already thinking of what he would ask in return next time, confident the answer would be yes. Amanda rested her palm against the glass. $4 trillion was not about luxury. It was about reach. It was about deciding which doors stayed open and which quietly disappeared. It was about understanding that power did not announce itself. It waited until it was needed. Jin-woo gathered his things, efficient as ever. Before he left, he paused. "They will push back," he said. "Slowly at first, then all at once." She turned, meeting his eyes. "Let them." When the door closed behind him, the apartment fell into a deep, listening stillness. Amanda moved through the rooms differently now, as if gravity itself had shifted. Each step belonged to her, each shadow bent the way she expected it to. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat at the table with the documents spread out like a map and traced the lines with her finger. 17 countries. Industries nested inside industries. Leverage stacked so carefully it looked delicate, though it was anything but. She thought of fire again, how it consumes what feeds it, how it leaves behind something stronger if guided properly. By morning, the phoenix was no longer a metaphor. It was a strategy. Morning light crept into Jae-hoon's penthouse through tall glass walls, thin and pale, like it knew better than to announce itself too boldly. The city below was already awake, screens flickering, traffic inching forward, money moving faster than blood. But inside, he moved at his own pace, calm, certain, untouched by urgency. His phone vibrated on the marble counter for the 3rd time in 10 minutes, the name of Kim Industries' CFO glowing on the screen like a warning flare. He turned it face down without reading the message. Wedding planners filled the room instead. Fabric samples were spread across the table. Seating charts lay half complete. Someone talked about flowers flown in overnight. Jae-hoon listened with the faint smile of a man who believed he had already won. A wedding was a public promise, a clean image, proof that his world was stable, generous, under control. He told himself this mattered more than numbers that rose and fell every hour anyway. Another vibration. Another ignored call. By mid-morning, the underboss arrived without waiting for permission. Kang moved like someone who had learned to read rooms before stepping into them, eyes sharp, voice kept low. He did not sit. He never did when something felt wrong. "The short positions are stacking faster than they should," Kang said, placing a tablet on the table. "Not just one fund, several. Quiet ones." Jae-hoon barely glanced at the screen. "Markets breathe. They inhale panic and exhale profit. You've seen this before." Kang nodded, though his jaw tightened. "Not like this. Someone is anticipating a stumble. They're betting we won't see it coming." Jae-hoon waved a hand, dismissing the concern the way one swats away smoke. "Kim Industries has survived worse. Internal reports always exaggerate risk. That's how accountants justify their salaries." "What about the delayed transfers?" Kang pressed. 3 suppliers are waiting, and the CFO is nervous because that's his nature," Jae-hoon cut in. "Let him worry. I won't." What he did worry about was timing. The ceremony date, the guest list, the image of Min-seo walking toward him, flawless and composed as cameras flashed and allies smiled. A marriage would quiet rumors. It would anchor loyalty. It would make him look untouchable. When Min-seo entered the room, the conversation ended without a word. She wore silk the color of old wine, her hair pinned back with careful ease. In her hands was a velvet box, small and dark. She smiled, the kind of smile that asked for attention without demanding it. "Do you like it?" she asked, opening the box slowly. Inside lay the jade necklace. It was unmistakable, thick links carved with symbols older than modern money. The stone caught the light and held it, deep green with veins that looked almost like movement beneath the surface. Jae-hoon felt a brief, sharp recognition before he buried it under desire. He knew where it came from. He knew who had lost it. He knew what it meant to wear it openly. Min-seo lifted it, letting the weight of it rest against her palm. "They said it suits me." "They?" Kang asked, though he already knew the answer. Jae-hoon ignored him. He stepped closer to Min-seo, fastening the necklace around her neck himself. The jade settled against her skin as if it belonged there. The room seemed to hold its breath. "It's perfect," he said. "You look right." Min-seo met his eyes in the mirror. There was something steady there. No surprise, no hesitation. She had crossed the line already. This was simply proof. Kang cleared his throat. That piece was not meant to resurface yet. Jae-hoon's reflection hardened. It resurfaced because I allowed it to. Or because someone wanted you to claim it, Kang replied. Silence followed. Heavy. Dangerous. Min-seo reached up, touching the jade lightly, as if feeling for a pulse. "Isn't that how power works?" she asked. "People leave doors open and wait to see who walks through." Jae-hoon smiled again, this time with pride. Exactly. By afternoon, the CFO's messages had grown longer, more detailed, less polite, charts attached, warnings underlined. Jae-hoon scrolled through them with half an eye while Taylors adjusted his jacket. Numbers blurred into shapes. Red arrows meant little when he could see Min-seo across the room, radiant, already wearing the future he had chosen. He typed a single reply. Handled. Focus on compliance. It was a lie, but one he had told often enough to believe. Outside, stock prices shifted again. Quiet transfers moved through shell accounts. Someone sold what they did not own yet. Someone else bought fear at a discount. The city kept its secrets well. That evening, Kang tried once more. If this is a coordinated play, we should pause public moves, delay the wedding announcement, reduce exposure. Jae-hoon poured himself a drink, slow and deliberate. "Fear makes men sloppy," he said. "I won't lead from fear." Kang studied him, seeing not a prince but a man in love with his own certainty. "Then at least let me prepare for fallout." "There will be none," Jae-hoon replied. Min-seo joined him, resting her hand on his arm. The jade gleamed between them, heavy with stolen history. "Trust yourself," she said softly. "You always do." He did. And that was the blindness. Quiet, comfortable, dressed in silk and promises. While he planned a celebration meant to seal his dominance, the ground beneath Kim Industries was already shifting. Allies were counting exits, enemies were counting profits. And the jade, warm against Min-seo's skin, marked not a victory, but a betrayal already set in motion. The first thing Amanda noticed was the sound, not the music, that came later, but the low, careful murmur of a room full of people who knew how to behave in public. The Shilla Hotel's grand ballroom had been dressed for the cherry blossom gala, with pale petals drifting from the ceiling, soft lights warming the marble floors, and long tables dressed in linen so white they looked untouched by human hands. Everything felt planned down to the breath people took before they spoke. Amanda stepped inside quietly. Her black hanbok was simple, almost modest compared to the sea of color moving around her. The silk fell gently over the curve of her stomach, unmistakable now. She had chosen it on purpose. No embroidery shouting for attention, no colors asking to be noticed, just clean lines, careful tailoring, and dignity. She rested one hand on her belly as if reminding herself why she was there, why she would not turn around and leave. Eyes followed her, though few lingered. A glance, a pause, then polite disinterest. Some recognized her and quickly looked away. Others frowned slightly, trying to place her face before giving up. The forgotten wife rarely made sense in a room like this. A young attendant checked her name and gestured toward the back. "Table 42, he said softly, already turning to the next guest. Table 42 sat in the far corner, close enough to see the stage but distant from the heat of influence. Junior staff members filled most of the seats, men who bowed too deeply, women who smiled too quickly. A few distant relatives sat stiffly, their conversations polite and empty. No one rose when Amanda arrived. A chair was pulled back for her, careful but impersonal. She sat. The chair felt colder than the rest of the room. As she settled, the weight of being placed, not invited, not honored, pressed against her chest. She had once entered rooms like this on Jae-hoon's arm, guided by whispers and bowed heads. Tonight, she was a name on a seating chart that had been quietly adjusted. Across the ballroom, a ripple moved through the crowd. Heads turned, conversations paused mid-sentence. Min-seo had arrived. She wore red silk that caught the light with every step, the color deep and deliberate. The jade necklace rested against her collarbone, unmistakable, heavy with meaning. Amanda recognized it immediately. Everyone did. It had not been seen in public for years, not since Jae-hoon's mother had passed. To wear it was not fashion. It was a statement. Min-seo walked as though the room had been waiting for her, and perhaps it had. She smiled easily, acknowledging greetings without stopping. When she reached the head table, attendants moved with practiced speed. The chair beside hers remained empty, polished, untouched. Jae-hoon's place. Min-seo sat without looking at it. From table 42, Amanda watched the moment stretch. The empty chair spoke louder than any announcement. It said absence without explanation. It said control without effort. It said choice. Someone at Amanda's table leaned in, lowering her voice. "He's running late," she said, as if sharing a harmless detail. Amanda nodded, though no one had asked her opinion. The program began. Music filled the room, gentle at first, then confident. Dishes were served in quiet coordination. Laughter rose and fell in waves. Toasts were prepared. All the signs of celebration were present, yet something felt misaligned, like a painting hung just slightly crooked. Amanda focused on small things: the warmth of the tea between her palms, the steady rhythm of her breathing, the faint kick against her ribs that reminded her she was not alone. She did not look toward the head table again, not until the applause started. Minseo stood. She thanked the sponsors, the board, the families whose names carried weight. Her voice was calm, trained, pleasant. She spoke as though she belonged there, not because of marriage, but because the space itself had made room for her. When she mentioned Jae-hoon, she did so lightly, with a smile that suggested understanding rather than apology. "He sends his regards," she said, "and his trust." Applause followed, generous and immediate. Amanda clapped when it was expected. Her hands moved automatically, her face composed. Inside, something tightened. Not pain exactly, but clarity. This was not neglect. This was design. A server leaned close to refill her glass and whispered, "Congratulations," glancing briefly at her stomach before retreating. The word landed awkwardly, floating between kindness and discomfort. As the evening wore on, people drifted closer to the head table. Laughter grew louder there, warmer. At table 42, conversations stayed safe, work-focused, careful not to touch anything personal. Amanda smiled when spoken to. She answered politely. She was present in body, invisible in role. Yet there was a steadiness in her that surprised even her. She had been placed in the corner, yes, surrounded by those who held no influence, seated far from the power she once shared. But she was still in the room, still invited, still wearing her name, her history, her future beneath her ribs. When she stood to leave, no announcement followed. No one stopped her. She walked past the rows of tables, past the stage, past the empty chair that had never been filled. Minseo did not look up. At the doors, Amanda paused. The sound of the gala softened behind her, turning distant, almost unreal. She rested her hand on her stomach once more, grounding herself. Table 42 had not been a mistake. It had been a message. And for the first time that night, Amanda understood exactly how to answer it. The ballroom had been arranged like a stage, though no one said it aloud. Crystal lights burned overhead, too bright, unforgiving, catching every tremor and breath. Amanda felt it the moment she stepped inside. The way sound thinned, the way people watched without turning their heads. This was not a celebration. It was a reckoning dressed in silk. Kim Sharu rose slowly from her seat, the room bending toward her without instruction. She did not need a microphone. Her presence carried on its own, sharpened by decades of being obeyed. When she smiled, it was precise, practiced, the sort that never reached the eyes. She placed one hand on the podium, as though steadying herself for something heartfelt, and the performance began. She spoke of history first, of sacrifice, of ancestors who had protected the family name through war, hunger, exile, and bloodshed. Her voice was smooth, almost tender, the way a blade looks gentle until it moves. Guests nodded along, relieved by familiar language, by the comfort of tradition framed as virtue. Amanda stood still, shoulders relaxed, chin lifted just enough to signal dignity rather than defiance. Then Kim Sharu's tone shifted. It was subtle, but Amanda felt it before she heard it. The words sharpened. The pauses grew longer. She began to speak of purity, of the danger of dilution, of how easily a legacy could be weakened when vigilance slipped. She spoke of foreign influence like an illness, something that crept in quietly, wearing charm and good manners, pretending to belong. A ripple moved through the room. Some guests glanced toward Amanda. Others stared harder at their glasses. Cameras clicked, hungry for the moment, for the fracture. Kim Sharu continued, now fully settled into her role. She spoke of duty, of responsibility to blood and name, of the cost of sentiment. She announced that her grandson, Jae-hoon, would soon marry a proper Korean woman, someone chosen with care, someone who understood the weight of what she would carry. Applause followed, uneven but loud enough to sound convincing. Amanda felt the words land like cold rain. Not shocking, she had learned better than to expect mercy, but heavy all the same. Still, her face did not change. She did not blink too fast. She did not shift her weight. She gave the cameras nothing. Then came the final cut. Kim Sharu announced with ceremonial calm that Amanda was officially severed from the family name. No longer affiliated, no longer protected, no longer acknowledged. It was said cleanly, like reading a legal clause, and for a moment the room forgot how to breathe. Whispers erupted immediately, crawling across the ballroom like sparks. Some people looked at Amanda with pity, others with curiosity, a few with quiet satisfaction. The cameras zoomed in, waiting for the crack, for tears, for anger, for collapse. None came. Amanda stood there, composed, her hands folded loosely in front of her. If there was pain, it stayed where it belonged. If there was rage, it did not spill. She had learned long ago that survival often depended on denying predators the pleasure of reaction. Across the room, Jae-hoon remained frozen. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed somewhere just beyond Amanda, as if looking directly at her would betray him. She did not look back. Whatever passed between them had already been claimed by this room, by this woman, by a family that only loved what it could control. Kim Sharu closed her speech with a soft smile and a small bow, as though she had offered a gift rather than an execution. Applause followed again, louder this time, relief clapping against cruelty. The matriarch resumed her seat, satisfied, her final act complete. Amanda waited until the noise settled. She could feel the weight lift slightly, not because the damage was undone, but because the waiting was over. There is a strange clarity that comes after public humiliation. Nothing left to fear, nothing left to lose. As she turned to leave, she caught her reflection in one of the mirrored walls. The woman staring back at her looked calm, steady, untouched. It struck her then, not with sadness, but with certainty, that whatever Kim Sharu had tried to erase had already outgrown the reach of this family. The doors closed behind her, muting the whispers, the applause, the cameras. For the first time that night, Amanda inhaled fully, not in relief, in readiness. The performance was over, and the matriarch, for all her power, had just made a mistake she would not be able to undo. Amanda did not rush it. She let the silence breathe first. Table 42 had gone quiet the moment she pushed her chair back. Cutlery stilled. Conversations thinned into whispers that fell away entirely as she stood. The ballroom lights caught the soft line of her shoulders as she smoothed her jacket once, a small habit from an older life, then stepped into the aisle. Every footfall was measured, not stiff, not hesitant, the kind of calm that comes from having already made peace with the outcome. Sharu was still speaking when Amanda reached the edge of the stage, or trying to. His voice trailed off as he noticed her there, waiting, eyes steady, hand already lifted in a polite request that somehow carried authority. The microphone changed hands without argument. For the first time that evening, Sharu looked unsure of where to place himself. Amanda faced the room and began in Korean, clear, fluent, unaccented enough to land like a dropped glass. A murmur moved through the board tables. Chairs creaked. A few heads snapped up, startled by the sound of her voice alone. This was not rehearsed politeness or memorized phrases. This was command, shaped by years of listening before choosing when to speak. She thanked them for their time, for their patience, for their faith in systems that promised fairness while quietly feeding on obedience. Her tone never sharpened. That was the most unsettling part. She spoke as if she were explaining a balance sheet, not exposing a long, careful lie. Then she switched to English, not for effect, but for clarity. "My name is Amanda Clark," she said, and let the name rest where it fell. "And tonight, I am here in my capacity as the majority owner of Hansong Dynamics." The pause that followed did not come from confusion. It came from disbelief. She continued before it could harden into denial. Phoenix Capital acquired controlling interest through a series of legally executed transfers finalized this morning. The documentation has already been verified by independent auditors. You will find copies being distributed now. As if on cue, Park Jin-woo appeared at the side doors with a team of lawyers dressed in dark restraint, each carrying folders stamped with seals too formal to dismiss. They moved through the room with practiced efficiency, placing evidence into waiting hands, answering questions before they were asked. The sound of paper sliding across linen-covered tables was louder than any argument could have been. Amanda watched it all without turning her head. She did not need to look back to know it was working. "I did not come here to take anything," she went on. "I came here to return something that was taken from me." A gesture. Subtle. The screens behind her flickered to life. Security footage filled the ballroom, grainy but undeniable. A hallway. A reception desk. The same transaction repeated again and again. An envelope passed across a counter. A nod. A timestamp. W27,000. Every day. No breaks. No forgiveness. 147 days of small payments extracted not for service, but for permission. To enter. To exist. To keep a job that was never meant to be held hostage. Gasps rose this time. Not loud. Controlled. The kind people make when they understand exactly what they are seeing and wish they weren't. Amanda spoke over it, her voice steady as the images rolled. This was framed as policy. It was explained as custom. It was enforced as punishment. The footage shifted, zoomed. Faces were circled. Names appeared beneath them, clean and factual. Dates aligned. Patterns emerged too precise to excuse. This was not one man's corruption. It was routine. She met the eyes of the board members one by one, not accusing, simply present. "You were told this protected the company," she said. It did not. It protected a structure that profits from silence. Sharu had gone pale. Park Jin-woo stood with his hands folded, watching the room instead of the screens, ready to step in if anyone tried to interrupt. No one did. Amanda lowered the microphone slightly, as if confiding something personal. "I paid," she said. "Every day. Not because I believed in it. Because I needed to understand it. Because systems reveal themselves when you stay long enough to see how they behave when they think no one important is watching." A breath passed through the room, collective and restrained. I built Phoenix Capital quietly, patiently, with partners who understand that control is not about noise. It is about timing. The screens went dark. The silence that followed was heavier than before. "This board will vote tonight," she said. "Not on whether this ownership stands. That is already settled. You will vote on whether this company chooses reform or chooses exposure." She handed the microphone back to Sharu with a nod that was neither kind nor cruel, just final. As she stepped away, conversation erupted behind her in careful bursts. Legal language, whispered calculations. The sound of people realizing the floor has shifted beneath them. Amanda returned to table 42, sat, and folded her hands as if she were simply waiting for dessert. She did not look back at the stage. She didn't need to. The fire had already done its work. The room did not erupt. It thinned. That was the first sign the balance had shifted. People leaned back, not forward. Pens stopped moving. The air changed from hunger to calculation. Minseo stood without asking permission. She did not raise her voice. She did not look at Jae-hoon when she lifted her hands to her throat. The jade necklace, once a symbol, once a promise, once a quiet threat, came away easily. The clasp clicked like a small, final door closing. She set it on the table in front of her, green against polished black, and slid it forward with 2 fingers. "I'm done," she said. Not to him, to the room. The meaning landed before the words did. Cameras caught it. Assistants froze. Someone near the far end inhaled sharply, as if they had forgotten how breathing worked. Minseo did not wait for reaction. She turned, walked past Jae-hoon without slowing, and the doors opened for her the way doors always had. That was the last gift the old order gave him. Jae-hoon rose halfway, then stopped. He looked around for support and found posture instead. Straight backs, unreadable faces, hands folded as if in prayer for a god they no longer believed in. The man who had been untouchable was suddenly standing in a room that no longer needed him. The vote followed with efficiency that bordered on cruelty. Sharu's name was read aloud, stripped of honorifics, stripped of narrative. Removal from all positions. Immediate effect. No debate, no speeches, no long goodbyes. He did not protest. He smiled once, thin and sharp, the smile of someone who understood the rules too late. Security appeared as if summoned by thought alone. The door closed behind him without ceremony. When Amanda stood, the room adjusted again. This time, toward gravity. She did not perform. She did not posture. She spoke like someone reading weather, not fate. Kim Industries, she said, would no longer exist as it had. The name had carried power, yes, but power without discipline rotted fast. The new structure would be Watson Kim Global, not a merger in spirit, but a correction in practice. Leadership would be earned, not inherited. Advancement would be tracked, not assumed. Decisions would leave paper trails. Results would be measured, not excused. A mission statement appeared on the screen behind her. Clean language, no slogans that begged to be admired. Standards that could be tested. Accountability that did not flinch. Some people nodded. Others stared, already calculating what this meant for their private arrangements, their quiet shortcuts, their old favors. Amanda let the silence stretch long enough to make it uncomfortable. Then she turned her head slightly, just enough to include Jae-hoon in her line of sight. "There is a position available," she said. "Entry level, operations support, daily reporting, field exposure." A pause. W27,000 per day. The number landed harder than any insult could have. It was not poverty. It was instruction. "You will arrive on time," she continued. "You will leave when dismissed. You will submit work that can stand on its own. You will be corrected in public and praised in private if earned. This is not punishment. This is education. You wanted legacy. This is how one is built." Jae-hoon opened his mouth, closed it. The room watched him relearn his face. Pride fought reflex, habit lost. He nodded once, shallow, as if bowing to a weight he had never trained to carry. Outside the glass walls, the city moved on, unaware that an empire had just been rearranged rather than destroyed. That was the quiet kind of victory, the kind that lasted. Minseo did not look back when she reached the elevator. She held the jade necklace in her palm, feeling its cool insistence, then dropped it into a waste bin beside the doors. The elevator descended. The building rose above her. For the first time in years, Her shoulders loosened. Inside the boardroom, seats were reassigned. Titles adjusted. A new chart replaced an old one. The knives stayed hidden, but the rules governing them had changed. People began to take notes again. Careful notes, the kind written by those who understood that survival now depended on work, not proximity. Jae-hoon sat alone at the edge of the table, already shrinking into the margins of a story that no longer centered him. Tomorrow, he would report to someone half his age. Tomorrow, he would learn how much a one weighed when earned one task at a time. And somewhere between the hum of servers and the low murmur of a company learning how to breathe differently, an empire found its new shape. Not louder, not kinder, but cleaner. 6 months changed everything, not with noise or spectacle, but with quiet proof that work done the right way lasts. The house felt different now, softer, real. Amanda noticed it most in the mornings when sunlight reached the living room without bouncing off tension first. Ji-yeon slept in a cradle close enough that Amanda could hear every small breath, each one steady and stubborn, like a promise that refused to break. The company told its own story. Numbers did not lie, and these ones spoke clearly. Profits rose by 34%, earned through clean contracts, careful audits, and partners who stayed because they trusted the work, not because they feared the consequences of leaving. The old channels were gone. No backroom favors, no coded language, no meetings held after dark. What surprised most people was not that the company survived without those ties. It was that it grew faster once they were cut loose. Amanda did not celebrate loudly. She never needed to. Her satisfaction came from small moments, signing payroll knowing every salary was paid from honest revenue, walking into board meetings without bracing herself, sleeping through the night without the buzz of late calls demanding silence or compliance. Power, she had learned, did not need to announce itself. Jae-hoon felt the change in a different way. The mailroom was quiet work, repetitive, humbling. At first he treated it like a punishment that would pass. Then he began to notice the rhythm of it, the way letters carried decisions, consequences, apologies, and hope in plain envelopes. He saw names he once ignored, departments he once ruled without understanding. No one bowed when he entered. No one looked away. They greeted him, or they did not, and both reactions felt earned. Some afternoons, he paused before delivering mail to Amanda's office, steadying himself the way people do when they stand near something they once broke. She never avoided him. She never softened the truth either. When their eyes met, there was no accusation left between them, only clarity. He was learning, slowly, that character was not proven by control, but by what remained when control was gone. At home, Amanda found a balance she once believed impossible. Mornings belonged to Ji-yeon, afternoons to the company, evenings to both. She spoke to her daughter in English while feeding her, then switched to Korean while rocking her to sleep. The words were simple, but the intention was firm. Ji-yeon would grow up knowing she did not have to choose one side of herself to survive. Both languages rested in her life the way truth rests in a story that no longer needs hiding. The jade necklace stayed close. It no longer burned against Amanda's skin the way it once had. She wore it when she wanted to remember, not the loss, but the turning point. It had traveled through greed, fear, and misuse before finding its place again. Not as an ornament, as a reminder that heritage could be reclaimed without blood or silence. One afternoon, while Ji-yeon lay on a blanket near the window, Amanda lifted her camera. The baby's fingers curled and uncurling with no concern for symbols or stories yet. Amanda framed the shot carefully, jade against soft fabric. Her daughter's face turned toward the light, curious, unafraid. She pressed the shutter once. Then again. She did not rush. Moments like this deserved patience. Later, while Ji-yeon slept, Amanda opened her laptop. The folders were organized now, clean and honest, like the systems she had rebuilt. One name stopped her for a second longer than the others. She clicked it, then paused, fingers hovering. The old title had served its purpose. It reminded her why she refused shortcuts, why she demanded clarity, why she never backed down when pressure whispered easier paths. She renamed it without ceremony. Evidence of resilience. The word felt right. Not dramatic, not defensive, just true. Amanda closed the laptop and picked up her daughter. Ji-yeon stirred, then settled, her breath warm against Amanda's shoulder. Outside, the city moved on, unaware of the quiet victory taking place inside a woman who had lost much and rebuilt more. This was legacy, not reputation, not fear, not control, but proof. Proof that strength could be clean, that leadership could be human, that power, once reclaimed, could be passed down without shame. And in that stillness, with Jade resting where it belonged and a future shaped by intention rather than reaction, Amanda understood she had already won. Thank you for sticking around with me, my wonderful story. Family, and if Amanda's quiet victory stayed with you longer than expected, do not walk away just yet. Hit that subscribe button right now so you do not miss what comes next, because the next chapter always arrives when you least expect it. Like this story if you felt the weight of her choices, the cost of her strength, and the power of what she reclaimed. And I want to hear from you. Tell me where you are watching from. I read every single comment. Your voice matters here. Because this story isn't just mine, it's ours. Stay sharp, stay close. See you in the next one.